The stars looked different through the viewport of the Defiant. Lieutenant Hyunwoo had seen them 1,000 times before, but today they seemed colder. His hands moved across the tactical display, checking weapon systems and shield generators. Everything was ready. Everything had to be ready. "Lieutenant, status report," Captain Ji-won said from the command chair. Her voice was steady, but Hyunwoo could hear the tension beneath it. They all felt it. "All systems operational, Captain. Weapons charged, shields at maximum." He paused and looked at her. "We're ready for whatever comes," Ji-won nodded. She was younger than most captains, only 35, but she had earned her position through skill and determination. Her dark eyes scanned the view screen, watching the empty space ahead. It wouldn't be empty for long. 3 weeks ago, everything had changed. The colony ship Horizon's Dawn had been traveling to the Kepler 442 system, carrying 5,000 colonists to a new world. It never arrived. Instead, an alien fleet appeared from nowhere and destroyed it, 5,000 people gone in an instant. The message that followed was simple and terrifying. The Vren Collective had spoken. They claimed this entire region of space. Humanity had 10 days to abandon all colonies in 12 star systems or face complete destruction. 10 days to give up everything humans had built over 50 years of expansion. Earth's government had tried to negotiate. Ambassador Daun had sent hundreds of messages requesting dialogue, offering compromise, pleading for peace. The Vren ignored every single one. When the deadline passed, they attacked. New Beijing fell first. Then Harmony Station, then the research outpost at Ross 128. Each time the Vren ships appeared, fired their weapons, and vanished. Human defenses couldn't match their technology. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, and worst of all, they had something humanity had never encountered before. "Captain, incoming transmission from command," Ensign Tae Yang announced. The young communications officer's fingers flew across his console. "It's Admiral Park." On screen, Ji-won ordered. The Admiral's face appeared, haggard and exhausted. "Captain Ji-won, the Vren fleet has been spotted near Colony World New Seoul. You're the closest ship. Get there and evacuate as many civilians as possible." "Understood, Admiral. What about engaging the enemy?" The Admiral's expression darkened. "If you must fight, fight. But Ji-won, you need to know something. We've analyzed the attacks. The Vren are using biological weapons, some kind of toxin that liquefies human tissue on contact. Our people don't just die, they dissolve. Anyone hit by those weapons suffers for hours before death. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Ji-won's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir. We understand. Get our people out of there. That's priority 1. Park out." The screen went dark. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Hyunwoo cleared his throat. "ETA to New Seoul is 40 minutes at maximum speed. Take us there." "Full power to engines," Ji-won commanded. The Defiant surged forward faster than light, racing toward a battle they might not survive. In the crew quarters below, 200 sailors prepared themselves. They checked their equipment, said quiet prayers, and wrote messages to loved ones they might never see again. Hyunwoo thought about his sister back on Earth. He had promised to visit after this tour of duty. He wondered if he would keep that promise. Dropping out of FTL in 30 seconds, the navigation officer announced. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat," Ji-won ordered. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The Defiant emerged from faster-than-light travel and hell greeted them. New Seoul burned. The colony sprawled across a green world that had reminded the first settlers of Earth's Korea. Now smoke rose from a dozen cities. In orbit, 3 massive Vren warships circled like predators. Their ships were strange, organic-looking things that seemed to pulse with sickly green light. Reading multiple civilian transports trying to evacuate, Tae Yang reported. "And Captain, I'm detecting Vren attack craft pursuing them. Target those fighters." "Fire at will," Ji-won snapped. The Defiant's railguns spoke, hurling slugs of depleted uranium at near light speed. 2 Vren fighters exploded. 3 more broke off their attack and turned toward the Defiant. "Incoming fire," Hyunwoo shouted. Something green and viscous splashed against the shields. Where it hit, the energy barrier sizzled and sparked. Hyunwoo's console showed shield strength dropping rapidly. "Captain, whatever that is, it's eating through our shields like acid." "Evasive maneuvers. Get us clear." Ji-won gripped her armrests as the ship lurched sideways. More green projectiles streaked past them. One struck a civilian transport. Through the view screen, they watched in horror as the ship's hull began to melt. Emergency pods ejected, but more green fire caught them. The pods dissolved. People inside screamed for the few seconds before death took them. All civilian ships, this is the Defiant. Form up behind us. We'll provide cover, G1 transmitted. The battle became chaos. The Defiant darted between civilian transports and Vren fighters, shields failing, hull taking damage. Hyunwoo fired every weapon they had, destroying 2 more enemy craft. But for every one they destroyed, 2 more appeared. Then the Vren capital ships opened fire. Massive globs of biological matter, each the size of a house, launched toward them. The Defiant couldn't dodge them all. One struck the port side. Alarms shrieked as hull breaches opened on decks 5 and 6. Sealing off damaged sections, Hyunwoo reported, his voice tight. Casualties reported. Medical teams responding. We can't win this, the navigation officer said quietly. G1's hands clenched. We don't have to win. We just have to buy time. How many transports have escaped? 17 so far, Captain, Tae Yang answered. Then we keep fighting. For 2 more hours, the Defiant danced with death. They saved 31 transport ships carrying nearly 20,000 people. But they couldn't save everyone. They watched New Seoul's capital city get hit by Vren bioweapons. Watched as green spores spread across the streets. Watched as people ran and fell and died screaming. When the last transport jumped to FTL, G1 gave the order to retreat. The Defiant limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris. Behind them, New Seoul fell silent. In the medical bay, doctors worked frantically on the injured. 3 crew members had been exposed to the Vren toxin when the hull breached. They lay on beds, their bodies slowly breaking down at the molecular level. The doctors could do nothing but give them drugs for the pain. Hyunwoo visited them before they died. One was a young ensign who had served on the bridge just that morning. Her name was Yoonji, and she had talked about her daughter's upcoming birthday. Now her skin was turning gray and liquid. Her eyes met his, filled with agony. Did we save them? She whispered. Yes, Hyunwoo said, taking her dissolving hand. 20,000 people are safe because of you. She smiled, and then she was gone. That night, as the Defiant traveled back to friendly space for repairs, Hyunwoo stood in the observation deck. Captain Ji-won found him there, staring at the stars. We lost 18 crew members today, Ji-won said quietly, and a colony of 3 million people. How do we fight an enemy like this? Hyunwoo asked. They have weapons that make death into torture. Technology we can't match. What do we have? Ji-won was silent for a long moment. Then she said, we have each other. We have determination. And we have the refusal to give up no matter what. Will that be enough? It has to be. But as they stood there, both knew the terrible truth. Humanity was losing this war. Badly. And unless something changed, unless they found some advantage they didn't know they had, the Vren would exterminate them all. The war had begun. And humanity was dying. 3 months into the war, Sergeant Bora had stopped counting the dead. There were too many. She had watched friends dissolve into puddles of organic matter. She had pulled soldiers from wreckage only to see them die in her arms. She had learned that courage meant continuing to fight even when hope was gone. Now she crouched in a trench on Hala 7, checking her rifle for the 3rd time. Around her, 40 Marines prepared for the coming battle. They were all that remained of her original company of 200. The rest were dead, wounded, or missing. Sarge, how long until they hit us? Private J-Ho asked. He was 19 years old and had arrived on Hala 7 just 2 weeks ago. His hands shook as he loaded his weapon. Could be minutes. Could be hours. Vren don't follow our schedules, Bora replied. She tried to sound confident, but the truth was she had no idea. None of them did. Hala 7 was supposed to be different. High Command had decided to make a stand here, to show the Vren that humanity wouldn't surrender without a real fight. 50,000 troops had dug in across the planet's main continent. They had artillery, air support, orbital defense platforms, everything they needed for victory. But Bora had been a soldier for 12 years. She knew the difference between a defensive position and a grave. This felt like a grave. Movement, someone shouted. Enemy contacts, north side. Bora raised her rifle and looked across the scarred landscape. At first she saw nothing. Then shapes appeared in the distance, moving fast. Vren ground forces, hundreds of them, advancing in formation. Here they come. All units open fire. The battle erupted like a volcano. Bullets and energy weapons filled the air. Explosions tore through the Vren lines, but they kept coming. They always kept coming. For an hour, Bora's squad held their position. They fired until their weapons overheated. They threw grenades until their arms ached. 3 Marines fell, then 5, then 8. Still they fought. Then something changed. The Vren forces suddenly pulled back, retreating beyond weapons range. An eerie silence fell across the battlefield. "Why are they stopping?" Jeho asked, breathing hard. Bora didn't answer. She had learned to fear Vren retreats. They usually meant something worse was coming. A minute later, she saw it. High above, Vren aircraft appeared, flying in a tight formation. They weren't carrying bombs or missiles. Instead, they dropped something that looked like red mist. The cloud drifted down slowly, spreading across the entire battlefield. "Gas masks. Everyone get your masks on." Bora screamed, but it was too late. The red mist settled over the trenches like fog. It didn't have a smell. It didn't irritate the skin. At first, Bora thought maybe their masks had worked. Maybe they had escaped. Then Private Jeho collapsed beside her, his body convulsing. All around the trench, Marines began falling. Their muscles locked up. They couldn't breathe. Their eyes went wide with terror as paralysis took them. Bora felt it too. A tingling that started in her fingers and toes, spreading rapidly through her body. Her legs gave out. She fell to the muddy ground, her rifle tumbling from her hands. This was the Crimson Spore. Intelligence had warned them about it. A fungal weapon that attacked the nervous system. Death came within hours, but those hours were pure agony as your body slowly shut down while your mind remained aware. Around her, Marines died. She heard their choked gasps. She saw their twisted faces. Jeho lay 3 feet away, foam coming from his mouth, eyes staring at nothing. Bora couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. The paralysis crept toward her chest and throat. Soon it would reach her heart and lungs, and then she would die like all the others. She thought about her mother back on Earth, about her brother who had died in the first week of the war, about all the things she would never do, never see, never say. In front of her face, she saw the red spores coating the ground like rust. They had a strange texture, almost like powder but slightly moist. Her hand lay in a thick patch of them. The paralysis was nearly complete now. Bora could feel her heart struggling. Her lungs barely functioned. Death would come in minutes. Some desperate, angry part of her mind thought, "If this is how I die, I won't die passive. I won't die just lying here." With the last bit of strength she had, Bora moved her hand. She scooped up a handful of the red spores and shoved them into her mouth. If she was going to die from this poison, she'd die fighting it, even if that meant consuming it. The spores tasted bitter and earthy, like old mushrooms mixed with metal. She forced herself to swallow. Then everything went black. Bora woke up 36 hours later in a medical tent. Her head pounded. Her stomach felt like someone had filled it with acid. Every muscle in her body ached. But she was alive. "Don't move too quickly," a voice said. Dr. Sang-hee, the chief medical officer, stood beside her bed. The doctor looked exhausted but amazed. "You've been through something incredible. What happened?" Bora's voice came out as a croak. "You survived the Crimson Spore. You're the only one from your entire battalion. Everyone else exposed to it died within 12 hours. Dr. Sang-hee pulled up a chair. "Tell me exactly what you did." Bora explained about eating the spores. The doctor's eyes widened. "You ate it? The actual fungus?" "I thought I was dying anyway. Didn't seem like I had anything to lose." Dr. Sang-hee immediately called for more tests. Over the next 2 days, they took Bora's blood, scanned her organs, analyzed her cell tissue. What they found changed everything. "Your body metabolized the toxin," Dr. Sang-hee explained, showing Bora the test results she couldn't understand. "Somehow your digestive system broke down the poison into harmless compounds. You got very sick, yes, but you survived. And now you have antibodies. You're immune to the Crimson Spore. How is that possible? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out." A week later, Bora found herself behind enemy lines. The battle for Hala 7 had been lost. The surviving human forces had retreated, but Bora and a dozen others had been cut off. They were trying to reach an evacuation point 40 miles away, moving through territory now controlled by the Vren. They ran out of food on the 3rd day. "We should try hunting," one soldier suggested. "Nothing to hunt. Vren killed everything," another replied. Bora looked around at the landscape. The Crimson Spore had spread everywhere, coating rocks and trees like rust-colored snow. An idea formed in her mind. A crazy, desperate idea. "I might have a solution," she said. The others stared as she scraped up a handful of spores and ate them. They thought she had lost her mind. They thought she was committing suicide, but Bora didn't die. She got sick for a few hours, yes. Her stomach churned and her head ached. But by evening she felt better, and her hunger was gone. "It's food," she told the shocked soldiers. "For me, anyway. I don't know if it'll work for you, but it keeps me alive." Over the next 3 days, Bora survived on nothing but crimson spore while leading her squad to safety. The others watched in disbelief as she consumed what had killed thousands of their comrades. On the 4th day, they encountered a Vren patrol. Bora's squad took cover behind a rock formation, but one Vren soldier spotted them. Through his helmet's recording system, he watched Bora casually scrape spores off a boulder and eat them like they were berries. The Vren soldier stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. A human was eating the crimson spore, the weapon that had destroyed armies. The toxin that brought agonizing death. This human was eating it like food. He transmitted the recording back to his commanders, flagged as a malfunction. It had to be a malfunction. No living thing could survive consuming the crimson spore, let alone use it as nutrition. But Bora and her squad made it to the evacuation point. They made it home. And when Dr. Sang-hee saw the report, saw that Bora had lived for days eating nothing but the fungal toxin, she understood something that would change the entire war. Humans were different. Their bodies could do things the Vren never imagined. Their evolution on Earth, surrounded by poisonous plants and toxic animals, had given them an advantage no one knew existed. The question was, could other humans do what Bora had done? Dr. Sang-hee began planning experiments. She began recruiting volunteers. She began to hope. In space above a distant Vren world, war leader Thex received the recording from the patrol. He watched it 3 times, his confusion growing with each viewing. "Is this real?" he asked his science officer. "We don't know, sir. It seems impossible." Thex stared at the image of the human eating spores. "Find out if it's real. If humans can survive our weapons by consuming them, we need to know immediately." But by then it was already too late. Word was spreading through the human military, spreading through the colonies, spreading across Earth. Humanity had found its edge. Commander Young-sik woke up in a cell that smelled like chemicals and fear. His head throbbed from where the Vrenstun weapon had hit him. His uniform was torn and stained with blood, though he couldn't remember whose. The battle for Hala 7 felt like a lifetime ago. He remembered the retreat order, remembered his ship taking fire, remembered the hull breach and the emergency pods launching. After that, everything went dark until he woke up here. The walls around him were smooth and pale like the inside of a bone. Through a transparent barrier, he could see Vren guards standing watch. They were tall creatures, nearly 7 feet. With skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed faintly blue, they didn't look at him. To them, he was probably just another specimen. A door opened that Young-sik hadn't noticed before. A Vren entered, smaller than the guards, wearing something that looked like a medical coat. Behind the creature came 2 more guards, both armed. "Human Young-sik," the Vren said, speaking through a translation device. The voice sounded mechanical and cold. "I am Science Director Vril. You will answer questions." Young-sik stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'll tell you my name, rank, and service number. That's all you get. We shall see." Vril gestured, and the guards brought in a chair, forcing Young-sik to sit. "We have questions about your biology. You will cooperate, and if I don't..." Vril picked up a device from a table Young-sik hadn't seen. It looked like a spray bottle. "Then you will experience discomfort. This contains a mild toxin, not enough to kill, but enough to cause significant pain. Do you understand?" Young-sik said nothing. Vril took that as defiance and sprayed the toxin on his arm. Young-sik expected agony. He braced himself for the burning that other soldiers had described. Instead, he felt a tingling sensation. It was uncomfortable, like a rash, but not painful. After a minute, even that faded. He looked at his arm, expecting to see his skin dissolving. Instead, there was just a red mark, like a mild sunburn. Vril stared at the spot, then at Young-sik's face. She moved closer, examining him. "You should be screaming. This toxin destroys nerve tissue. Why do you not scream?" "I don't know," Young-sik said honestly. "Maybe your stuff doesn't work as well as you think." Vril left the room quickly. Young-sik heard her speaking rapidly in the Vren language to someone outside. When she returned, she had more devices and more guards. Over the next 3 days, Vril ran test after test. She exposed young Sick to different Vren toxins. Some made him feel sick. Some gave him a headache. One made him vomit for an hour. But none of them killed him. None even came close. Vril's confusion turned into fascination. She began asking different questions. Questions about Earth, about human history, about what humans ate. "Explain your diet," she demanded on the 4th day. Young Sick shrugged. "We eat plants, meat, fish. Pretty standard stuff." "These plants, are they selected for nutritional compatibility?" "What do you mean?" "On Vren worlds, we cultivate specific species that are safe for consumption. Most native plants produce defense compounds that would poison us. How do your people identify safe foods?" Young Sick almost laughed. "We eat a lot of things that are technically poisonous. Our bodies just handle it." Vril's eyes widened, which Young Sick found strange on such an alien face. "Explain." So Young Sick told her about Earth. He explained how humans ate peppers containing capsaicin, a chemical designed to cause pain. How they drank coffee and tea loaded with alkaloids. How they consumed cassava, which produced cyanide. How they even drank alcohol, literally poison, for recreation. "This is impossible," Vril said. "These compounds would kill any Vren. They would kill most species in the galaxy." "Well, they don't kill us. They make food taste good." Vril left again. This time she was gone for hours. When she returned, she had containers filled with different substances. "I want to test something. If you cooperate, your conditions will improve. Food, water, perhaps even communication with other human prisoners." Young Sick knew he shouldn't agree, but he was curious now. "What kind of test?" "I want to see what you can consume." Vril presented the first container. Inside was a gray paste that smelled terrible. "This is a cleaning compound. It contains acids that dissolve organic matter. For my species, exposure to even small amounts is fatal." She placed a tiny amount on a sterile plate and slid it toward Young Sick. "Consume it. You want me to eat acid?" "Yes, I believe you may survive. I must know if my theory is correct." Young Sick looked at the paste. This was insane, but something about Vril's manner made him think she genuinely wanted to understand, not just torture him. And if humans really could survive things that killed aliens, maybe that information was worth knowing. He took the smallest possible amount on his finger and touched it to his tongue. It tasted sharp and metallic, like licking a battery. His mouth tingled. His throat felt warm when he swallowed. But he didn't die. He didn't even feel that bad. Vril made notes frantically. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Over the next week, Vril tested dozens of compounds on Young Sick. Some were Vren weapons. Some were industrial chemicals. Some were just random toxic substances. Young Sick got sick from many of them. He spent several miserable nights vomiting and shaking. But he survived everything. 2 substances he found almost pleasant. One tasted spicy like hot sauce. The other was slightly sweet. When he told Vril they were not bad, she looked at him like he had grown a second head. "Those are military-grade nerve agents," she said quietly. "A single drop kills a Vren in seconds. You describe them as not bad. What can I say? I like spicy food." Vril was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Why did your species evolve this way?" Young Sick thought about how to explain it. "Earth is dangerous. There are poisonous plants everywhere, venomous animals, toxic fungi. Our ancestors had to adapt or die, so we adapted. We learned to eat things that wanted to kill us. We turned poisons into nutrients. You are telling me your entire species evolved on a death world. We just call it Earth, high above the planet." On the command ship Eternal Dominion, War Leader Thex reviewed Vril's reports. He read them twice, then a third time, unable to believe what he was seeing. "This cannot be accurate," he said to his strategic officer. "You are telling me that humans can metabolize our weapons?" "Not all humans, War Leader, but many can, to varying degrees. And those who survive initial exposure develop immunities. They can teach their bodies to process our toxins." Thex pulled up the video recording from Hala 7, the one showing the human female eating crimson spore. He had thought it was a malfunction or trick. Now he understood it was real. "How many of them can do this?" he asked. "We estimate at least 40% of human soldiers, possibly more. And Science Director Vril believes all humans have some resistance. Their entire species is adapted for toxin consumption." Thex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare. Not fear exactly, but close. Uncertainty. The Vren military doctrine relied heavily on biological weapons. They had conquered 40 star systems using toxins and diseases that other species couldn't defend against. Their weapons turned battlefields into graveyards. Their enemies died in agony, spreading fear that made surrender the only logical choice. But humans didn't die from these weapons, or rather some did, but others survived, and those survivors got stronger. They developed immunity. They consumed the weapons like food. What does Science Director Vril recommend? Thex asked. She suggests we consider ceasing biological warfare against humans entirely, War Leader. She believes it may be making them stronger rather than weaker. Thex stared at the video again. The human eating spores, eating death itself. And if we stop using biological weapons, how do we fight them? Conventional warfare, War Leader. Ship to ship, soldier to soldier. And our advantage in such warfare? The strategic officer hesitated. Minimal, War Leader. Human weapons technology is nearly equal to ours. Their soldiers are well trained. Without our biological superiority, the war becomes balanced. Thex understood what that meant. Balanced meant longer, bloodier, more expensive. Balanced meant the Vren might actually lose. He looked at his officer. Inform the council. Tell them we need to discuss strategy changes, and tell them why. Yes, War Leader. After everyone left, Thex sat alone in his command chamber, watching the video loop. The human eating spores, the weapon that had killed millions, consumed casually like nutrition. For the first time since the war began, Thex wondered if the Vren Collective had made a terrible mistake. Lieutenant Hyunwoo stood in the briefing room aboard the Defiant, staring at the holographic display. The image showed something that should have been impossible. Human soldiers cultivating crimson spore in hydroponic gardens. This is our new advantage, Colonel Haewon said, gesturing at the display. She was a sharp woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Thanks to Sergeant Bora's discovery and Dr. Sang-hee's research, we now know that approximately 60% of humans can safely consume Vren bioweapons after initial exposure and adaptation. Captain Ji-won, standing beside Hyunwoo, raised her hand. Colonel, safely consume is a generous term. The reports say most soldiers get extremely sick during the adaptation period. They do, Haewon acknowledged, but they survive. And after adaptation, they can use these substances as emergency rations. The crimson spore, in particular, is high in proteins and minerals. Dr. Sang-hee has developed processing techniques that reduce the adaptation sickness significantly. Hyunwoo studied the data scrolling past the image. So we're turning their weapons into food. That's the strategy. Part of it. Haewon changed the display, showing battle footage from recent engagements. The other part is psychological warfare. Lieutenant, I'm about to tell you something that sounds absurd, but it's proving incredibly effective. The footage showed a firefight on Colony World Meridian. Human Marines advanced under heavy Vren fire. When the Vren deployed their toxin weapons, coating the battlefield in poisonous compounds, the Marines didn't retreat. Instead, several soldiers deliberately exposed themselves to the toxins, got sick, recovered within hours, and continued fighting. One Marine even stopped during the battle to consume crimson spore while under fire. We're broadcasting these engagements on all frequencies, Haewon explained. We're making sure every Vren soldier sees humans eating their most feared weapons. The psychological impact is devastating. Ji-won frowned. You're deliberately risking our soldiers' lives for propaganda. No, Captain. We're showing the Vren that their weapons don't work anymore. That what kills them feeds us. 3 Vren battalions have surrendered in the past month. Not because we defeated them in combat, but because they lost the will to fight. They're terrified. Hyunwoo could understand that. If he watched an enemy eating bullets, drinking poison, consuming death itself without dying, he would be terrified too. The Defiant has a special assignment. Haewon continued. We're launching Operation Harvest. Your ship will lead a task force to reclaim the Meridian system, and you'll have some unique cargo. 2 days later, the Defiant departed with 6 other warships. In their cargo holds, they carried something no military vessel had ever transported before. Sealed containers of crimson spore, processed into a nutritious paste that tasted like mushroom soup. Ensign Minji, one of the fighter pilots, complained about the taste during the pre-battle meal. It's not terrible, but I wouldn't call it good either. Try mixing it with hot sauce, another pilot suggested. Makes it almost edible. We're eating alien weapons with hot sauce, Minji said, shaking her head. My grandmother would have thoughts about this. But when the battle began, nobody was thinking about taste. The Vren defense fleet at Meridian was substantial, 12 warships and 40 fighters. The odds weren't good. All fighters launch, came the order. Minji climbed into her cockpit, running through her pre-flight checks. Her squadron had taken a new name, the Poison Eaters. They had painted their ships with images of humans consuming red spores. Minji thought it was a bit dramatic, but she understood the point. The battle started badly. The Vren ships had superior positioning and firepower. 2 human frigates took heavy damage in the first exchange. Minji's squadron flew through a storm of enemy fire, losing 3 fighters in the opening minutes. Then the Vren deployed their biological weapons. Green clouds of toxin sprayed across the battlefield, coating human ships and fighters. Minji's canopy got splashed with the substance. Warning alarms shrieked as her ship's systems detected the contamination. All pilots, this is Wing Commander Lee. Execute Protocol Harvest. Minji took a deep breath and opened her emergency rations. Inside was a packet of processed crimson spore paste. She squeezed it into her mouth, swallowing quickly. It tasted terrible. Her stomach lurched, but she had been through adaptation training. Her body knew how to handle this. All across the battlefield, human pilots and crew members consumed the processed bioweapons. Some got sick immediately. Others managed to keep fighting through the nausea. The Vren watched their sensors in confusion as their weapons had almost no effect. Then the human ships broadcast a message on all frequencies. It showed footage from inside the Defiant's mess hall. Soldiers sat eating processed spore paste while discussing tactics. One Marine held up a packet and said, "Thanks for the supplies, Vren. This batch is actually pretty good." The psychological impact was immediate. Vren fighter formations broke. 3 of their capital ships began retreating. The human fleet pressed the advantage, pushing forward aggressively. Minji's squadron swept through the confused Vren fighters. She shot down 2 before they could react. The rest scattered, unable to coordinate. They're breaking. All units maintain pressure. Captain Jiwan's voice came over the command channel. The battle turned into a rout. Vren ships fled or surrendered. Within 4 hours, humanity controlled the Meridian system again. In the aftermath, Colonel Haywan transmitted her report to High Command. Operation Harvest successful. Enemy morale has collapsed completely. We're intercepting Vren communications and the content is telling. Their soldiers are calling us Death Eaters and Poison Demons. They're afraid. Across human-controlled space, similar operations unfolded. Every battle followed the same pattern. Vren would deploy biological weapons. Humans would consume them and keep fighting. Vren morale would break. Humans would advance. Dr. Sang-hee worked tirelessly to improve the processing techniques. She developed different flavors of spore paste. She created concentrated supplements that boosted soldier performance. She turned Vren weapons into human advantages. But the real breakthrough came when she discovered something unexpected. Humans who regularly consumed processed bioweapons showed improved immune response to other threats. Their bodies became more resilient overall. The toxins were making human soldiers stronger. It's like exercise, she explained to Hyunwoo during one of his visits to the research station. Exposing the body to controlled amounts of toxins forces it to build better defenses. These soldiers aren't just immune to Vren weapons now. They're healthier in general. Hyunwoo looked at the test results. So the Vren literally made us stronger by attacking us with bioweapons. Exactly. They gave us adaptation training without realizing it. The news spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Morale, which had been crushed during the early defeats, soared. Soldiers who had been terrified of Vren toxins now saw them as free nutrients. The psychological shift was complete. In orbit above a reclaimed colony world, Captain Jiwan met with Ambassador Da-un, who had come to assess the situation. They stood in the observation deck watching supply ships unload. "We're winning," Jiwan said. "After months of defeat, we're actually winning." Da-un nodded slowly. "But at what cost? We're fundamentally changing how our soldiers relate to danger. We're making them consume poisons willingly. Better than dying from those poisons." "True. But Jiwan, think about what happens after the war. These soldiers are building tolerances to things that should kill them. They're becoming different." Jiwan understood the concern, but she couldn't regret the change. Different in a good way, stronger, more resilient. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe not, Da-un agreed. But it's certainly a strange thing. They watched as another transport landed. Its cargo hold full of processed spore paste headed for the front lines. Far away, on the Vren command ship, War Leader Thex read the latest intelligence reports. The humans had reclaimed 7 systems in 6 weeks. Vren casualties were minimal because most units were surrendering rather than fighting. The biological weapons stockpile, once the collective's greatest asset, now sat unused in storage facilities. "We need to negotiate," his strategic officer said quietly. "We cannot win a conventional war against humans. Their numbers are growing while ours shrink, and their soldiers fight with a determination we cannot match." Thex stared at the star maps, watching human territory expand. "When we began this war, I believed we were fighting primitives. I was wrong. Yes, War Leader. Prepare a communication. Send it to Earth's government through diplomatic channels. Tell them the Vren Collective wishes to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender, War Leader." Thex was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Terms of peace. There is a difference. The war was not over yet, but it was ending. And the Vren knew it." The neutral station orbited a dead star between human and Vren territories. Nobody owned it. Nobody claimed it. It was simply empty space where enemies could meet without firing weapons. Ambassador Dayun arrived first, traveling on an unarmed diplomatic vessel. She brought a small staff, her assistant Subin, 2 security officers, and a chef. The chef surprised everyone, but Dayun had explained her reasoning. "We're not just negotiating borders," she had said. "We're negotiating understanding." War Leader Thex arrived 6 hours later. His ship was also unarmed, a gesture of good faith that had probably caused arguments among his command staff. He brought military advisors and Science Director Vril, who had requested to attend specifically. The first meeting was formal and cold. Both sides sat across a long table in the station's conference room. Translators worked overtime as diplomats discussed terms, boundaries, reparations. Everything was stiff and professional. Captain Jiwan and Lieutenant Hyunwoo attended as military observers, sitting quietly while politicians talked. Jiwan watched Thex carefully. The Vren leader carried himself with dignity, but she could see the weight of defeat in his posture. He was a warrior who had learned his weapons were useless. After 3 days of negotiations, they had accomplished nothing. Both sides made demands the other wouldn't accept. Frustration built until Subin leaned over and whispered something to Dayun. The ambassador's eyes lit up. "War Leader Thex," Dayun said, interrupting a particularly tedious discussion about mining rights. "May I suggest something unconventional?" Thex's translator conveyed his response. "Speak. This station has a dining facility. Tonight, instead of sitting here arguing, why don't we share a meal? I've brought a chef who has prepared dishes from both our worlds. We can discuss peace while experiencing each other's cultures." The Vren advisors immediately protested. Eating with the enemy was undignified. It showed weakness. It was inappropriate. But Vril spoke up, her voice eager through the translator. "I would very much like to see human food preparation. For scientific purposes." Thex considered for a long moment. Then he said, "Very well. We will share this meal." That evening, the dining facility had been transformed. Tables were arranged in a circle rather than opposing lines. Lighting was warm instead of harsh. The chef, a woman named Hyojin, had worked for 20 hours straight preparing the feast. The first course arrived, a soup made from earth vegetables with mild spices. The Vren tasted it cautiously. Vril made notes on a small device. Thex took a second sip, then a third. "This is pleasant," he said through the translator. "Not toxic." "Most of our food isn't toxic," Dayun replied with a slight smile. "Though we do enjoy some spicy dishes." The second course demonstrated that. Hyojin served Korean-style grilled meat with a sauce containing moderate amounts of capsaicin. Dayun ate normally, clearly enjoying the heat. The Vren took one small bite and immediately reached for water. "This is a weapon," Thex said, only half joking. "You eat this for pleasure?" "We do," Jiwan confirmed. "The burning sensation is enjoyable to us. Our bodies interpret it as flavor, not pain." Vril was fascinated. She asked questions about human taste perception, about evolutionary advantages of capsaicin tolerance, about cooking techniques. Her enthusiasm was almost childlike. Then came the third course. Hyojin brought out small portions of processed crimson spore paste, prepared with herbs and served on crackers. The room went silent. "This is the fungus," Thex said quietly. "The weapon that killed your soldiers?" "Yes," Dayun confirmed. "But also food. Would you like to try it? The Vren stared at the plates like they contained explosives, which from their perspective they did. It's safe for us, Subin said gently. We've all eaten it many times. Dr. Sang He processed it to remove most of the toxicity while preserving the nutritional value. Commander Young Sik, who had been released from captivity 3 weeks earlier, picked up one of the crackers. He had been specifically invited to attend tonight. I ate this stuff for weeks while you held me, Vril. Watched you test it on me. Now I'm eating it as a snack at a peace negotiation. Life is strange. He bit into the cracker, chewed, and swallowed. Actually, Hyojin's preparation is much better than the military rations. She added something that makes it almost tasty. Vril watched him with clear scientific interest. You consume this regularly now? A couple times a week? Good protein source, Young Sik smiled. Your people made something you thought was a weapon. Turns out it was food. Just depends on the biology of who's eating. The Vren couldn't eat any of it, of course. Even processed, the spores would kill them. But Hyojin had prepared alternative dishes for them. Earth foods carefully tested to ensure they contained nothing toxic to Vren biology. Mild fruits, simple grains, protein sources with no defensive compounds. As the meal progressed, conversation flowed more naturally. Thex asked about Earth, about human history, about how a species evolved to eat poisons. Dayan asked about Vren culture, their arts, their view of the galaxy. We made assumptions about your people, Thex said. Late in the evening, we believed you were weak because you were new to space. We believed our biological weapons would end any conflict quickly, as they always had before. And we made assumptions too, Daun replied. We thought all intelligent species would choose diplomacy over war. We were unprepared for the violence. But you adapted. Your soldiers learned to consume what killed them. I have watched the recordings many times trying to understand. How does a species develop such resilience? Hyunwoo spoke up. Earth was not kind to our ancestors. Poisonous plants, venomous animals, toxic fungi, parasites, diseases. Everything was trying to kill us. So we learned. We adapted. We survived by turning dangers into advantages. We ate things that wanted to kill us and we thrived. Vril leaned forward. This is the key to understanding humans. You are not warriors by choice but survivors by necessity. Your entire evolution was warfare against your own planet. That's one way to see it, Jiwan said. Another way is that we learned to coexist with danger. We didn't eliminate all the poisonous things. We learned to live alongside them. To benefit from them. The dinner lasted 4 hours. By the end, something had shifted. Not friendship exactly, but understanding. Respect. The next day's negotiations went differently. Both sides listened more. Compromised more. The detailed arguments about territory and resources continued, but the tone had changed fundamentally. Within a week, they had a treaty framework. Humanity would control the 12 contested systems. The Vren would maintain their existing territory. Both sides would establish trade agreements and scientific exchanges. War reparations would be minimal, paid through technology sharing rather than economic penalties. The signing ceremony was simple. Thex and Daun placed their marks on the document, while cameras from both civilizations recorded. But the moment that people remembered, the image that spread across human and Vren space, was different. After the signing, Hyojin brought out a final meal. She served Thex a dish of carefully prepared Earth food, verified safe for Vren biology, and she served Daun processed crimson spore, prepared as a delicate appetizer. They ate together, each consuming what represented the other's world. Thex eating Earth's bounty, Daun eating what had once been a Vren weapon. A photographer captured the moment. The image became famous, 2 former enemies sharing a meal, each trusting the other not with weapons but with sustenance. 5 years later, Sergeant Bora stood in front of her restaurant, checking the evening's reservations. The establishment, called Poison and Peace, served fusion cuisine combining Earth and Vren ingredients. Business was excellent. Humans loved trying new flavors. Vren loved experiencing Earth foods safely prepared. She had hired Young Sik as her manager. He had a talent for explaining dishes to nervous Vren customers who worried that everything might kill them. Table 7 wants to try the spicy noodles. Young Sik called from inside. I told them it's very hot. They still want to try. Bora smiled. Give them the mild version first. Let them build up slowly. Across town, Dr. Sang Hee worked in a research facility that now employed both humans and Vren. They were developing new medications based on human toxin resistance, treatments that could help other species survive previously fatal conditions. Vril visited often, sharing Vren medical knowledge in exchange. In orbit above Earth, the Defiant flew patrol with Vren ships. The Joint Peacekeeping Force, nicknamed Poison Eaters after Minji's old fighter squadron, protected both territories. Pilots from both species trained together, learning each other's tactics. Captain Ji-won had been promoted to admiral. Lieutenant Hyunwoo served as her tactical officer still, refusing promotion because he preferred working directly with her. They commanded the joint fleet, an assignment that would have seemed impossible 6 years ago. On a colony world near former battle lines, Min Ji and a Vren pilot named Thex Vin got married. The ceremony featured foods from both worlds. The guests included veterans from both sides, people who had shot at each other years before and now celebrated together. Ambassador Da-un attended, watching the celebration with satisfaction. Su-bin stood beside her, smiling at the sight of former enemies dancing together. "Did you imagine this when we started the peace talks?" Su-bin asked. "No," Da-un admitted.